This is the Gospel Revolution.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy.
Here's the founder and president of the Gospel Revolution, Michael Lilborn Williams.
Well, I don't even know whether to say good morning or not. We just told everybody time ended last week.
Oh,
what time is it, Daniel?
Welcome to the fullness day, the perfect day.
We'll go into that a little bit later. I'm having a good day today. In the biggest sense of the word, we've been in one day for 2,000 years now. And this day, the one that time still does exist in, is it's pretty good. I've got sunshine here, and Tennessee.
Yeah, you're glowing.
I am glowing. I've got my drapes open, and Daniel can't really see my form, just my glory.
Now, you told me your drapes weren't open. That was just you.
I just hate it when my testimonies can't lie. Very good.
Well, we finally have some sunshine here in Wisconsin. Well, we always have sunshine, but it's actually throwing off heat.
Wow. Goodness gracious. Well, let's hope that continues. My major concern for Daniel is probably not his biggest concern, is always that he's cold. Now, I'm projecting onto him my absolute dread of cold. So, but he tells me compared to where he used to live, it's all relative, yes. Right?
Yeah, goodness. Aunt Pat's probably still buried in a snowbank up there.
And the sad thing is, she's happy as a lark.
Yeah, she is. And Uncle Richard, he is probably skiing down that snow hill in front of their house.
Yes. Goodness gracious.
Well, the different joys of different people.
Mm-hmm. And
we live in a world full of diversity.
And people like things that you would never think. I'm going to reach out this morning and just ask people to just do what you can to at least not hate people that are not like you. This is not a good thing. It's not a new thing, that's for sure. And it's not exclusive to one side or the other. We always have to talk about sides. But goodness, let's stop the hate, stop the hateful statements, and as much as we possibly can. And let's. I just think you're going to live in a whole lot more peace. Do it for selfish reasons, you know. I turned off the news for selfish reasons. It's like, okay, I'm done with this. And you say, but yeah, the one side and the other side, and it's like, you know what? I'm 73 this year, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of difference anymore to me.
You know, and I think, Michael, that's a good opportunity for us to remind everybody here at the Gospel Revolution, we remain neutral on all of those things.
Yes, Daniel, thank you.
For the sake of the gospel. You know, we have amongst the GRs, we have a diverse
Boy, they are.
Group. Yeah. Old, young, white, yellow, black. I mean, in every way that we could be diverse, we are diverse. Even politically speaking.
Even in our politics. That is for sure. And I had an experience this week. I'm glad you brought that up, Daniel, because I had an experience this week that just really was concerning to me. And someone had observed one of the gospel revolutionaries, I think on Facebook, and they were posting they got a right to post their political views on their own Facebook. We asked that nobody post anything that infers that the Gospel Revolution is supporting your views. I don't think anybody's doing that at all. But because these people have, some of them, people know that are or have been closely related to the gospel revolution. So I got this call. It was really quite a desperate call. And I asked, well, why did you wait so long to get in contact with me? And they said, well, I saw this and I thought that they and this and that. So I thought that you, and it makes no difference which side they were on. It's the fact that they, as you know, the country is very divided. They thought that I was leaning in that direction or had embraced that direction. I don't lean. I'm telling you what, if you ever needed a picture of an in the middle guy, I agree with one side on profound things that the other side would profoundly disagree with, and vice versa. But I reserve the right to think for my freaking self. I'm not going to do. Don Bartlett told me not to outsource my thinking, so I'm not going to. So that's why I'm registered as independent. I see no possibility of registering as anything else because my views, I do have. There are positions on both sides that I embrace, and there are positions on both sides that I absolutely disagree with. But that should be irrelevant to you because we're not trying to promote. Now, if we were trying to promote one side over the other, then that should be of an interest to you, and we should be declaring openly what we are doing. But we'll never declare openly exactly where we stand on anything other than the gospel. Yeah. And on creation and on physics and, I guess we are going to say something about everything, but not politics.
Yeah, it's, and Michael, it's really empowering to realize that we don't set out to prove anything. Mm-mm. And I learned that early on. And I think if the gospel has impacted me most powerful almost than anything in regards to my day-to-day life is I don't have to prove to anybody anything. Wow. And what the freedom is to that and what that takes out of that, though, Michael, is the arguments, the fighting, and all of that. And even when it comes to Bible discussions, even when it comes to defending the gospel, I am so much at peace and so liberated that I don't need to prove that Jesus is the resurrected King and righteousness is given to all. I can live in that freedom, and I hope that there are people who want to hear that. But for those who don't, okay.
So, are you saying if people don't have a question, you don't have an answer?
That is exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, that was. It's been my freedom, and I cling to that. How many times I've been able to just sit and smile and nod my head, and everybody thinks I agree with them. But it's okay. See, a lot of people are afraid. Oh my God, they're going to think I don't care whether you think I agree or disagree. If I didn't say it, you can infer or imply anything that you want to. Because I still get confused on infer and imply. So I just use both of them.
Just use them both.
Yeah. And I know it's very simple, but for some reason in my brain, it's scrambled. And my brain's scrambled. So
yeah.
So sometimes words get scrambled.
I had the owner of my company called me the other day, and a driver had did something they shouldn't have done. And of course, because I manage a lot of these drivers, he came to me about it. And so I'm listening to him, and he's going on and on and on, and he's hot over this issue.
Yeah.
And then he stops for a second. He says, "Are you going to respond?" I said, "Did you have a question?" I hear everything you're saying, and I am in agreement 100% with what you're saying. But if you don't have a question, I don't have an answer for you.
I know. You do that to me. It's been really crazy watching this process that Daniel's gone through. And of course, I practice that, but I'm not used to having it practiced on me. And it's like, hello, McFly, anybody home? And So I realized that I have fallen prey to my psychology, philosophy. So, but he does. He just sits there and stares at you. It's really weird. I hope I'm not that weird. But it is an experience, and isn't it amazing? Somebody thinks that just because they turn up the heat, you're supposed to jump in the water.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's like cold water, hot water. I'm not jumping in either way. And I'm going to stand on the side while you ask your questions. I'm not jumping in with you either way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
My day's not going to be controlled by the temperature of your water today. Now, there is a psychology tip that ought to be on Facebook all the way around. My life will not be controlled by the temperature of your water. All right, we can sign off now. We've done it.
Yeah. I think Don, I don't know, remember if he used to open the show or close the show with this, is that we're visiting every train or something about every train that's on the track of freedom or something like that. And I think that's a good thing. As diverse as we are, as the gospel revolutionaries as a whole, just about different perspectives and all of that. We're just here riding the train tracks of freedom.
Yeah,
and if any of these ideas and thoughts lead to liberty and freedom and enjoying that liberty and freedom we have in Christ, then hey, all aboard.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what we're going to do today. We're jumping aboard the train. We've just been standing on the platform for a little while here and conversing like you do before you board the train, but all aboard.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And that train today is a timeless train.
Wow. We could go to see several movies. I immediately saw this train flying through the air. So, right.
Back to the Future. There's a train.
Oh, that's right.
One.
That's the one.
Yeah. I think there's a couple other ones, but that's the one that pops to my mind right away. Let me just share this verse that this I think was the last verse that we shared last week. And it's out of the Revelation. And it says this in Revelation 10 and verse 5, the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised up his hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that are in it, the earth and the things that are in it, the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be day no longer. Days no longer.
Yeah.
I think the King James Version says that there shall be time no more.
Yeah, time no more. And the process is over. When God first created everything, he said, this shall be for times and seasons, and, but the way to mark things. And but marking things pertaining to the kingdom of God and to prophecy, there's no more time. That time has ceased. This is equivalent, Daniel, isn't it, to the end of the world, which is the end of the aeon, right?
Yeah. If we think about in the Revelation again, we have this picture of heaven coming to earth, and this is Revelation 22 and verse 5. There shall be no night there. They need no lamp nor light of the sun, for the Lord gives them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. So at the end of the Revelation, what do we have? We have the no more need for the day and the night. Why? Because of this living forever and ever by the light.
Yeah.
I think that would be righteousness, right?
Well, that is very true. So now, we've been teaching, we got the understanding from the prophecy itself, from Christ himself in Matthew 24. He was talking about the end of the world, and now we know what end of the world he was talking about. And he was talking about, he said, except those days be shortened, no flesh would be saved. And then Paul said that in Romans chapter 9, that this would all that this was all cut short. And so we've got every affirmation, confirmation, prophecy, Jesus, Paul, all saying exactly the same thing. It's just we've not listened. So, but the thing that now we are realizing that one of the concepts of the reason it had to be cut off is because time ended.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So we saw the fulfillment of everything. Think of it, people. How could time, which measures prophecies and all of this, and yes, there was a continued prophecy, but this was a 3.5 years that extended past what all prophecy, everything was forecast to come to conclusion at when righteousness is brought in, when the law is fulfilled. All of those things are when, quote, as the King James says, time comes to an end. What time comes to an end? That time has come to an end. That age has abruptly ended, and there was no place to put the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Because in its time frame, it missed the train.
Yeah.
This train left the station. It's like getting to the airport 3.5 hours late. It's like, I want to get on the plane. I'm sorry, that plane left here 3.5 hours ago. Well, you're not going on that flight. I mean, you might book a later one or one tomorrow. Maybe the same one tomorrow after you sleep in the airport. Done that before. So that one was in Hawaii, though, so it wasn't that bad. I missed an island hop. And but when you're trying to get from the beach and back to your room and back to the little airport and go back to the other island, sometimes you just can't make it because you're on island time.
Yeah.
But the airlines don't run on island time. That's right. So, but basically, the last 3.5 years of Daniel's vision, it missed the train. Time was cut off. You can't count up to another 3.5 years when time stopped there. The time for prophecy, the time for when eternity has stopped. When eternity has started, time has ended. And seeing that's what brings us to this another incredible point about the 1,000-year reign. But the fact it's 1,000 years, the only ones that can put this to sleep for a while are the amillennialists. And they just say, oh, well, that is the eternal reign. That's symbolic. So, which is way better than all this other crap, pre, mid, and post. And then there's those that just say, well, it all pan out in the end. And that's not amillennial. Amillennial, their concept is the 1,000-year reign is a concept of the eternal reign. So, but it is not. And the reason we know, not guess, not believe, we know it is not, is because that time ended. So the 1,000-year reign had to precede the eternal. And we've talked about the ridiculousness of Christ beginning his eternal reign and then coming back here to do a 1,000-year stint. It's like, does he get demoted? Sorry, yes, you got promoted, but now you got to go back and do another 1,000 years. What is 1,000 years? We'll go along with James to the Lord today. 1,000 years, 1,000 years as a day. And that's where this concept comes from, is from, I'm not James, but Peter. From Peter quoting this out of context. And I remember that when I went back and I thought, what is this? How would he be able to say, oh, well, with God, 1,000 years is as a day and a day is as 1,000 years. It doesn't make any difference about time to God, when all these prophecies were aligned with time. And then I went back and read the prophecy, and it says specifically, once time, 1,000 years has passed, that's like a day to God. It's like, wow, that's kind of like being old. After 10 years have passed, that's like a year. Yeah. So I totally get that, and God being eternal, no wonder 1,000 years is as a day. Because the timeless one, the one who created the framework of time for us to be able to go through the process. Yes, process, folks. Let me tell you something. There was a process to get to righteousness for the human race. So what's the difference between the Gospel Revolution and Christianity. They still have a process from the cross forward. You're stupid. You just denied the whole work of the cross. There is no process now. But then with our mystic friends, they say there never has been a process. It's like, okay, so but that's the three positions on this, and it's up to you to think through it and decide for yourself. You're either going to side with Christian or Christian mystics, or mystic Christians or mystic mystics. They got so many names. Either the eternal, the 1,000-year reign is either yet to come, and that that righteousness has been established, and the process from creation to the cross, the process, the delays, all those things took place to the cross. It's either there or you put it after the cross, because they can't see righteousness. They've got process and delay laced in all. That's 46,000 denominations with process and delay, process and delay, process and delay. Now, the mystics say there's never been a process, there's never been a delay. It was all Adam's misconception. Well, I would just like to see a line that says that. I'm okay with that. But the moment you say that, this is what you've done. You've completely discredited the value of the work of the cross. Michael, they would never do that. When Francois du Toit stands up and says the blood of Christ could have been the blood of any man, don't tell me they don't devalue the work of the cross. They do. And I would say shame on you, but we know shame is gone. So we don't try to put shame on people. We don't try to put you back under law. But boy, we wish you were there for just a little while. We wish there was a hell just for a minute, No. Now, Daniel will stand and just stare at you if you don't have a question. So you better make sure you have a question.
Well, we were looking at this word in the Revelation 10 verse 6, where it says that there should be time no more.
Yeah.
And that word time is the Greek word chronos, which chronologically, that's where that word, comes from.
Chronicles.
And
just like
Chronicles. Yeah. Understanding. And what does that say? There's a process.
Yeah.
Michael, I didn't realize this when we were talking it, and you had said that a good way to translate that. And guess what? My New King James. Now, Vic called us out because he told me that my translation was incorrect. And so I'm going to say that my translation, maybe in this one, is a little more correct because it says that there should be delay no longer.
Wow.
I like the sound of that. So the King James says time no more, which appropriate. But the New King James says delay no longer.
Yeah.
And, Michael, we had been talking about the immediacy of righteousness, that the process is over. The delay is over. There was a chronological list of events that took place to get us to this. Now, if we read one more verse, it says, but in the days, it'd be interesting to see if that days is, I want to look at that.
Let's
if that
do it.
is Chronicles 2. So 10:6, 10:7. But in the Hermera,
The definition of that word,
which is the time space between dawn and dark, or the whole 24 hours, the days. Several days were reckoned by the Jews as an inclusive parts of both extremes. A period of time always defined more or less clearly by the context. An age, a day, years, different things. So, just again, the context.
Based on the context, yes, we can say what that
So
is.
here we have that there would be a time where there would be no chronological order. There would be no more delay. There would be no more process. There would be no more time. But verse 7 says, but in the day of the sounding of the seventh angel, when he was about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished, as he declared to his servants and his prophets. My goodness, there's a whole message in that verse, because you see something's about to happen.
Yeah.
But it stopped because something got finished.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about last week. And Michael, you brought that up here just a few minutes ago about that 3.5 years, that last trump that was about to sound, that was the sound of judgment. That this judgment was about to happen, but when he was about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished. Time would be no more. Delay would be no more. And in case you're wondering how this was all going to happen, guess what? God told it to his servants and his prophets that it would be this way.
And it's laid out succinctly, chronologically. We haven't even have two books called First and Second Chronicles, for God's sake. So chronology was important, enough to name two books after him, right? And this is the chronology of the kings, I think, is what that is. And but nonetheless, it is the Chronicles. This is the timeline. This is what happened and when. And I'm telling you that what happened and when is precise. It's accurate. The years and who was born and when they were born, how long they lived. This chronology is incredible. And it is incredibly precise, right up to the birth and the life and the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus. I was just talking to one of my friends who is out of Clarksville for a while. And I asked him, I said, so when will you be coming home? And he said, the job here is supposed to take us until through next week. But if we get finished up on Tuesday, I'll be able to come home. Bam. That's what you just read.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If the job gets done, go home. Here's the job. But if that job gets done, it's done. It's just that simple, right?
Yep.
And job finished. So what was the goal? The goal was everlasting righteousness and God and man becoming one. And now the one who did not know that was evidently Satan. He had plans for another 3.5 years. And boy, he got cut off. It's like, no, let's stay on the football field. No, well, I'm sorry. Time's, you know what that sound means? That means game over. No, we're going to keep our players out on the court. No, we can't lose. We're not supposed to lose. And the rain's coming down and the storms are flashing. And then it turns into snow and they're standing out there trying to play the game.
Yeah.
And, you can, and that's what 46,000 denominations are doing. They're standing on an empty field in the cold and the rain and the lightning and the storms, and they're standing there waiting for the game to be over.
The Apostle Paul writes this in Colossians chapter 2, speaking of people standing, telling you to keep playing. Let no one judge you in food or drink or regarding a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath. What are these? These are times. These are seasons, which are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance is of Christ.
Wow.
Let no one cheat you of your reward, taking delight in false humility and the worship of angels, intruding into those things which I have not seen, vainly puffed up in his fleshly mind, and not holding fast to the head, from whom all the body, nourished and knit together by the joints and the ligaments, grows with the increase that is from God. Therefore, if you died with Christ from the basic principles of this world, why, though living in the world, do you subject yourselves to regulations?
Why are you still out on the field?
That's really an interesting way to say this. So you died to the principles of this world, but we know we live in the world, but don't subject yourself to that. So why are you living by time? You've been freed from time. Yeah, we understand you live, we have 24 hours and, there's 60 minutes in an hour and all of this. We live by that in our day to day. But the reality is that we're living in a place of no time, in a kingdom of no time. We're living in our eternity. Our eternity is now.
Yeah. Every day, our eternity is now. And that is the only way you can say this, with embracing the reality and the truth of this. That's the reality and the truth of this. Is today we are living in eternity where there is no time. the ability to see this game over. I like that term, game over. How many times that's when, the other team doesn't get to try to score again. They're waiting to see who wins, and bam, game over is game over. And
you're out of time.
You're out of time. But I can do this, I can do that. But no, wait a minute, I can do this. I can think of 100 movies that end that way, and somebody wanting to move the clock back a little bit. Because if they'd have just got there in time, if they'd have just done this in time, if they'd have just done that. And it just can't be that just because the time limit expired, that these consequences have to be this drastic. But they are.
Come on.
You lost. Time's over. No more attempts to deceive the nations. No more attempts to jump in and out of people. No more attempts to have this spiritual power. You say, are you saying there's no such thing as evil? It's obvious there's evil in the world, but there is no spiritual evil. Now, every Christian's bones just cracked that heard that. To say there is no spiritual evil is you've taken away their process.
Right.
It's like, what am I going to do now? How many people have I heard say that as we've introduced every single concept of the gospel? You're not under the law anymore. Oh my God. So that means I can do whatever I want. So what am I going to do now? Now I'm afraid my husband's going to cheat on me. Now I know my wife. I know the only reason my husband's staying home is because he's afraid that God will strike him dead if he commits adultery. So don't tell me this. We've had wives and husbands both get very angry about not about them being freed from the law, but their mates being freed from the law. And then there's no, that God has declared peace. And what do you do with all your preachings and teachings of judgment? And, God will get you. And, people think they've made progress because they switched from that to the universe and karma. It's still Christianity, folks. It's still the process. You're still trapped in time that is no more.
Wow. Oh, this is so good, Michael.
Oh, it's gooder than good. I mean, I've talked to several people this week, and they are just, I had one break down and cry again, and this is a grown man, and just cried. And he's been in ministry all of his life, in ministry in foreign countries. He's been with the Hagins and all of these guys. And he is just so blown away.
Was that Doug Fisher?
Let's see. I did talk to Doug, and I talked to several people this week. That was Doug. Yes. And
I think you mentioned that he went preaching that to you about all the verses about time ending.
Oh, he did. Yeah. So part of what we be presenting to you in this was some of the things that he was sharing. Because after he heard that, it's just like bam, 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 bam. Everything just lined up in such a succinct order, and some of them we're sharing with you. So I'm wanting to see the verse in Romans 9 that Paul talked about. Except those days be shortened, we would be as Sodom and be made. And see all these comparisons. Say, for the scriptures say unto Pharaoh, for this purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. And who are you to say to the potter, why did you make me this way? He made one for destruction and one for mercy. You'll say to me, why does he yet find fault? But who can resist his will? So this is where Paul is drawing this line. Hath the pot power over the clay, over same lump, to make one unto honor and one to dishonor? And we used to put that, well, you're just a vessel of dishonor, Well, God made me this way, so I guess he's got to accept me the way he made me, right? And that he might show mercy to whom he called, to the Jews only, but also to the Gentiles. I will call them my people, which are not my people. And it shall come to pass, he quotes this again in later in, this is in Romans chapter 9. He does quote it again in chapter 10, doesn't he? and they shall be called the children of the living God. Esau also crieth concerning Israel, though the number be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. Now that is just profound now.
He got it done on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. He finished on Tuesday, so it was a short work. It was exactly what I heard on the phone. And, I didn't even think about that comparison until we were just talking. And let me look at this here just a minute, Daniel, because I've never looked into this verse. Okay, for he will finish, and that means fulfill, end the work. That's what that word is, logos. He's going to finish the word. Thank goodness. And cut it short. That is speedily to contract by cutting. It got shortened by cutting. Wow.
Contracted by cutting.
Contracted.
I like that.
Yeah. Contracted by cutting and in righteousness. And that just means righteousness. Because a short work, and that is the very same thing, to contract by cutting. The word, I'm blown away that word work is logos. He will finish, he will, and that's the word poio. The Lord make upon the earth. Short work will the Lord make upon the earth. And then goes on and says, and Isaiah saith before, except the Lord of the Sabbath had left us a seed, we had been as Sodom, and we'd been made like Gomorrah. And I remember teaching on this years ago. And I used to say, so does that mean that if unless the Lord shortens these days, we're all going to become gay? Because that's the story about Sodom and Gomorrah. These were all gay people, right? So, but the story about Sodom and Gomorrah is their destruction. Of course, God never did any of those things, according to our mystic friends. So we can't even use this seed. You see where that dilutes the work of the cross? This one verse, they have to throw away because Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't God doing that. So you can't use this to establish that God is not angry anymore, because he never was. How do you deal with this? It's not just the Old Testament, folks. This is repeated throughout. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles which followed not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel, which followed the law, they followed the protocol of righteousness, hath not attained to the law of righteousness. And what is the law of righteousness now? It's the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus. That is the one that God has written on every heart. I was looking at a rundown last week in the four Torahs. Folks, that's fantastic information. The Torah depends on what context you're reading in. I've heard this argument, no, the Torah is this, no, the Torah is that, no, the Torah is this. And it's like, you're all right. And they are. All of them are right. It's just that they think that everybody else is wrong because they don't agree with them. Don't you just hate it when everybody's right?
So we live in the time where there is no time.
Yeah.
We live in the day in which there is no time. But let's talk about that process for a minute, Michael. It talked about in the Revelation about the servants and the prophets. You just talked about the law. So law and prophecy are time bound.
Absolutely.
We are still in the series on the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And that was a time bound prophecy.
Yeah.
And it was during the age of the law.
Yeah.
And what we are preaching and what we are declaring is the 1,000-year reign of Christ was a literal 1,000-year period of time in which God ordained, God predestined. You just read it, that these pots would be used for this and that pot would be used for that. That was all preordained by God. Law and prophecy were preordained by God.
Mm-hmm.
The genealogies were preordained by God. But everything led us up to, as the Apostle Paul says in Ephesians 1:10, the dispensation of the fullness of time.
Yeah.
Everything pointed to that. What was that old saying? All roads lead to Rome.
Yeah.
That everything led to that one
Absolutely.
moment in history. And that one moment in history is where everything changed. And the big change that happened is it was the end of the law. It was the end of prophecy. It was the end of time. And now what is the result of that? It is eternity. It is righteousness. The delay and process, that was taken out of the way. Michael, we don't have any more delay. We don't have any more process to go through. It's already done.
No process, no delay, and that's what you call rest, right?
Yeah.
That is the rest that we have entered into, that we all entered into. Some people just are still on edge, but
and like you said about the mystics, that doesn't mean there wasn't a process.
Yes, and that's because the comprehension that you're at rest is to know what it was to work. The comprehension to know peace is to know what war is like. You don't know peace if there never was a war. So what they do is dilute the story so much. They don't just dilute it, they deny it, that they take the power of it out. That's why they have to become hyper spiritual in their appearance, in their smile, in their face, in their lilt. That all has to become spiritual, because that has to prove that they've got something that you don't. And that's why, when Andre Robbie gets started out, and it's just like the Pentecostal thing you do. And then Andre Robbie does exactly the same thing. And it's just not in that performance exact, but he performs that very same thing. And that's when you can hear everybody in the crowd. They don't give a crap what he says when he gets that. And then, oh, yes, Lord. Oh, yes, Lord. Oh, ha, 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 ha. And then everybody is ha, 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 and with him. And nobody hears a damn thing he has to say, because they really don't care, because they got to their moment. Well, guess what? That moment was the cross, and we've been living in it for a long, long time now. Daniel and I had a delayed process because we were trapped in your religion. We're not in your frickin' religion anymore. We are in Christ and in Christ alone. And you can say that there was no process, but the scriptures that you quote out of say there was a process. In fact, it was detailed, it was intricate, and the last of this was the 1,000-year reign in which all prophets prophesied. Think of that. Once Christ took the seat at the right hand of the throne of God in heaven, not the heavenlies, in heaven, he took the seat according to 110:1 of Psalms, right when David's anointing started. And it opens up the story. If you go and watch this, I'm telling you, it was a heavenly experience when I went to watch David. It's on, I think it's on Prime. If it's not, it's on Netflix. Anyway, I went to watch David's brand new release. I watched it as it came out, and that's just been last month, I think, over the last 2 months. And now they're getting ready to do another one. So successful. This is one of the most beautiful. There's some things in it that, that are not, and they admit they elaborate some things, but they elaborate the story. They exaggerate the story. They don't take away from the story. And everything that they do to it is not an insult to it. But I tell you, our mystic friends would insult everything about this story because they don't believe the story. So the power of knowing when this 1,000-year reign, let's see, after the 1,000-year reign, if you minus 790 from 1,000, you know how many years after the 1,000-year reign had started that the prophecy of Daniel started. it was like, okay, don't forget, we're in the 1,000-year reign, and this is part of what has to be done. And then Nebuchadnezzar's vision comes up after the 1,000-year reign. And it's like, okay, don't get distracted. We're still in this 1,000-year reign, and this is going to continue all the way up to the feet of iron and clay. They were only in the head of gold at the time. And every single empire that existed, right down to the Jews and the Romans, trying to bring an empire together to the feet and clay, that was right down to the cross. Jesus lived during the age of the feet and the clay, or the iron and the clay. That was during Jesus's ministry, was during the term of that vision of Nebuchadnezzar's, of the feet, iron and feet and clay. And then he was the rock that it's just, and then the four beasts, all of those came in several hundred years. And but see, it's interesting that you had these prophecies that went all the way to the cross, but you had your last prophecy almost 400 years before the cross. Now, people say, well, there was no more prophecy. Well, so what are we supposed to do? Look and see what the prophecies they gave said. You don't need any more. That's how complete the prophecies were during the 1,000-year reign. The 1,000-year reign only had to go for 600 years. And all the prophets prophesied between then and that last, up to the 400-year mark, Malachi, up to the 400-year mark. Why didn't they prophesy from the years of silence? What do you mean the years of silence? Did you not read the book? Did you not read the prophecy? Did you not read that Daniel had 490 years in it? And when you get to the 400th year, you're about 200 years or so, 250 years or so into Daniel's prophecy that lasts for 490 years, whatever those numbers. So Daniel's prophecy actually came 90 years before the last prophecy. But his prophecy lasted for 490 years. So I just wondered why God stopped speaking during the last. He didn't. He had already spoken. Man, I tell you, when you're good at your job, you can finish early. Right?
Yeah.
And God was good at his job, and Christ was good at his 1,000-year reign, and all the prophets prophesied under the anointing of the Christ. They prophesied under the anointing of the Christ, and during his 1,000-year reign. And no prophecy then, almost 400 years before the cross. However, the prophecies lasted all the way up until the cross. I hope that was clear and needed.
They went up to the cross, and Michael, that is why the 1,000-year reign of Christ cannot be in the future. Because everything that we have read to this point is that at the cross, time would end, the age would end. Jesus said at the end of the age, the end of this time is now. It's right here. The cross marks that moment. And if that is the marking moment, then the 1,000-year reign of Christ, a prophetic period of time, cannot be in the future. If all time and all prophecy and all law ended at the cross, then there is no more futuristic 1,000-year reign of Christ.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, the Christians' doctrines across the world have, a lot of them have a futuristic 1,000-year reign of Christ because they don't accept the fact that time ended. And however, you and I were talking about this yesterday, they have this weird hybrid because you have the 1,000-year reign of Christ is to come, but the eternal kingdom of God is living here right now.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How does that work? Can someone say cognitive dissonance?
and the cognitive dissonance is holding two things in your brain that cannot be reconciled as truths at the same time. Now, you wonder why Christians are confused? Folks, there's a degree of mental illness there in every Christian belief. There is a degree of mental illness in every Christian belief system that holds that holds two polar opposite opinions in the same brain. That creates something very dysfunctioning about the brain. Now, we don't know what all it does. I lived in it, so I know how dysfunctional it is. You guys have all lived in it. You know to the degree of dysfunction that you could live in, and you know to the degree that you now have the mind of Christ. You had the mind of Christ then. But why didn't we live in the mind of Christ? Because we were living in delay and process. Delay and process. Well, delay and process ended at the cross. Yeah. So by saying that we embrace Christ and yet we embrace delay and process, we are in cognitive dissonance. And there is confusion. I talked to one of my sisters and I'll tell them something about righteousness. Well, now I'm just all confused now. Yes, that's the way my sisters talk. I'm just all confused now. Why are you doing that, Mike? Because I know they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen to this. And it's like, sweetie, you were confused before we ever started this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We're addressing the confusion. What you're doing is you're not getting confused. You're seeing the confusion that you're in.
Oh, that's good.
And they can't confuse me by telling me what they believe. I don't drop my and say, no, wait a minute. Wait a minute, sis. Now you just got me all confused. I don't know. This can't be right. It's confusing me. I don't get confused by any Christian. Do you get confused by Christian doctrine?
Oh, yeah.
It would be confusing if we tried to drink it in, but we don't have to drop back and say, "Oh, I'm so confused," because we don't. We don't have anything to get confused about, Daniel.
No, we understand it. Yeah.
And so they can keep their confusion. We don't have to walk in it. Usually, when people say that's a defense mechanism that says, I don't know. This is all confusing to me now. That doesn't mean you're a bad teacher. It could mean they're a bad listener, or they're not listening at all. And what's confusing is, how do I hold to what I think and accept what you just said?
Yeah.
Even though you've proven it is true,
mm-hmm.
I will call what you're saying confusion.
Mm-hmm. It's like, Michael, you've experienced that so many times with all of these big name preachers that have said they cannot argue with what you taught about righteousness.
No.
They could not argue. They understood that. But how many of them said they can't teach it?
Yeah.
Why can't they teach it? Because it goes against everything else they've taught.
Yeah.
And you were preaching, you probably didn't know it at the moment, but you were preaching how we went from process to immediacy.
Yeah.
You were preaching how we went from the delay to immediacy.
Yeah.
You went from delay to the mind of Christ. Yeah. And that is that if there's a process that we go through, it's right here in our mind as I point to my mind.
That's our process.
And the process of me appeasing God, me having faith in God, me approaching God, me, all those things that we questioned here.
Yeah.
In the book of Hebrews a couple weeks ago, approaching the throne of grace in time of need. That's a process. That process is over. Jesus accomplished that process for us on our behalf. And that process, that delay, my righteousness, the delay of my righteousness doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Christianity will say your righteousness is delayed until you can confess with your mouth and believe in your heart the Lord Jesus raised from the dead. Until that moment, you are in the process. But what we didn't know is that he was called by those who didn't call upon him, who didn't even say, Lord, Lord. He was called by them. And he was predestined, and we were predestined, and we were determined, and we were called, and we were justified. Going back to our sports analogy, Michael, the game's over. Yeah. The consequence of that game is over. Yeah. And all we have now are the ESPN commentators standing on the side of the line saying, oh, the ref should have called that one. Oh, the ref should have called that one. The coach should have done this. That player should have done that. You can talk about it all you want, but the result is in.
Yeah.
The game is over,
Yeah.
and righteousness is here, and the process is done.
Process is done. And, even when they tell you, this is what really blew me away. They told me in the Baptist church, all I had to do is believe in my heart and confess in my mouth and get baptized too. And I did all that when I was 5 freaking years old.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was angry when I came home and told her I got saved. And because she let me go to vacation Bible school with my sisters in the springtime. And she called those teachers who were in that. My mom, you didn't mess with my mom. And she called them to the house and she said, I want to know what you told my son. And so she had some questions for me. And she asked me if I got saved, what did you get saved from? And I had all the answers. I got saved from sin. I got saved from hell. I don't have to go to hell. And my mom's whole family were preachers. And she didn't know anything more, but she knew I had just been into something that probably had destroyed her life. I never saw my mother in church, except when I got baptized. And she sat there crying. And I'm not sure she was crying for joy. I just don't know that she was crying for joy. But they tell you, see, they told me, Daniel, then it's over. Man, then you're in. That's it. But if you sin, you're out of the will of God. You're out of his favor. You're out from under the umbrella. So the process continues. In fact, I became more doubtful about my eternal destiny after I became a Christian than I was before I became a Christian.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm. Michael, as we muse about these things, I think about Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
You preached Ecclesiastes, I'm sure, at funerals.
Yeah.
And what was it all about? And they wrote the song about it.
Time to die.
Time to die. There's a season for this. Maybe I'll just read a few verses here. I'm going to pull a Michael. I'm going to go back to verse 1. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task which the sons of man are to be occupied, and he has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he puts eternity in their hearts.
My God, dang.
Except no one can find out the work that God has done from the beginning to the end.
It's amazing. You've heard all of that except the end of it.
Yeah. We
didn't read the end of it.
Yeah. You got to plant that seed.
Yeah.
Wait for the harvest.
And they're dead, but they're coming back out of the ground. Ain't no grave gonna hold his body down.
Ain't no grave.
Grave gonna hold that body down. Oh man, my gosh, you felt like you were in the rapture when you were doing it, right?
Yeah.
And you get to bouncing, and I mean, whoo! Next thing you know, you're just about to fly out of the room.
I got to tell you, I think that was one of Larry Huggins' favorite songs. I don't know how many times we were in the RV and I wake up to him singing that song. and then
He's
I found out why.
Get you up.
Yeah. I found out why, because we were up in the his testimony. He talks about this time that he spent up in the mountains in the Ozarks, and he had these hillbilly people, and the church that he went to, real Pentecostal church. And he took me to that church once. And I mean, they got the banjos and the harmonicas and all this. And
lovely.
I found out why he loved that song, because my goodness, they played that song "Ain't No Grave" with that hillbilly accent.
Yeah, and I bet it
was so good.
3 different levels of octave in it too. 4 different levels.
And you get that harmonica going, that banjo going. Oh, jeez.
Rocking the house for Jesus.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, I just, and that one, if we would just read the whole damn thing, it would probably be one of the best songs to sing in the world. But what about singing the part that goes on down about this, the time's going to be wrapped up. Seasons and all this are going to come to their what God started. It's going to have its end, but the beginning and ending with God. I mean, as far as the whole picture is, no, there's none of that. But this part of it was explained to us in detail. The moment that what God planted inside of Adam was the hope of righteousness, not righteousness, but he did plant the hope of righteousness in Adam, and that hope and that heart of the heart that beats for righteousness. There was the heart that beats for righteousness, and now there's the heart that beats as righteous.
Wow. Last week we talked about how the law was written on the heart, the Torah, and that was the law of Christ Jesus. And here we have what's written on that heart is eternity.
Eternity is written on that heart. And so that is the law that was written on the heart. It was the law of eternity. It's the law of the Spirit of life. That is eternity, and that is on our heart. And folks, if you're in Christianity, no matter which branch you're in, your doctrine is in cognitive dissonance to the gospel. We say it because we've been there. I was a Baptist doing it. I was a charismatic. I never liked telling people I was Pentecostal because we weren't those people that wear buns on their heads. Women can't wear makeup. My God, our group could wear makeup better than anybody. And half of them were the men, right? So, I mean, you can't have a worship and praise leader. It doesn't look good. But anyway, folks, this will save your soul. Why are we doing this? To clear up the cognitive dissonance that you've been in most of your life. So why do I not worry? Why are these anxiousness things gone from me? Why? Why? Because I left the entire doctrine of spirituality, of delay in process, is gone. So what did that do to my soul? That saves my soul. How do you get your soul saved? By bringing it in line with the truth of the gospel. And the gospel says grace and peace, right? That is the gospel. And yet you say, well, I just believe God never was angry. Then you don't have a gospel of peace. That's just all there is to it. Your brain is never going to accept that because your heart knows it's not true.
To be free from the process, to be free from the delay, to be free from the time. Well, I'm just waiting for Jesus to come back. I'm waiting for that time of peace, that time of all of this. And what we're saying is it's here. Open your eyes.
Yeah. No process, no delay. In the coming months, I'm going to be introducing some stuff to you. We've been doing research in physics on light and gravity. It is still law. Gravity is still a law, although E equals mc squared says it does not exist. But for some reason, NASA still runs by Newton's law. Every ballistic thing that happens on Earth happens according to Newton's law. They do not get out E equals mc squared to try to figure things out. Why don't they do that? Because, see, that's what Einstein did by trying to apply earthbound physics to the eternal. Therefore, he delayed light and he delayed gravity. And I'm telling you, this has just been pouring over me. And I finally see that the power of what has been robbed from a generation of children on this earth. Do you know that the Big Bang Theory started being taught? Now, I don't know that these have anything to do with each other, but I can tell you there was two things that happened in the 90s that had never happened on planet Earth before. You do the figuring out. What you do with it is what you do with it. The very first time that the Big Bang Theory was taught in school, and so what they started to teach teenagers when they went in freshman year, they started teaching them that they came from nothing, they are nothing, and they're going to nothing. Because that's E equals MC squared. It includes the Big Bang, and it includes heat death. Now, that's not death by heat, that's death of heat. So they're trapped in a world, they're a molecule here for a little bit of time, and they mean nothing, they came from nothing, and they're going to nothing. Now, for some reason, whether it has anything to do with each other or not, I do know the Big Bang Theory started being taught in the early 90s. By the late 90s, we have our very first school shooting. And since then, we've had hundreds. Two phenomenons that have never been on the planet. You say, but wait, no, Mike, you're wrong. There was one in Texas back in the 60s. There was one in the 60s. But the guy who did that one begged them to take his brain out when he was dead because he was convinced that there was something wrong with his brain. He killed his mother and his fiance or his wife before he went to the tower there in Texas, and then killed 9 or 10 people and wounded 20 something. And finally, a sniper's bullet took him out. But he had left he sought for help so incessantly from mental health, from every place he could. And he kept telling them, there's something wrong with my brain. There is something wrong with my brain. So they followed his request, and they took his brain out, and they found a brain tumor. He had a blastoma, some myoblastoma, and they said it was pressing on the part of his brain that controls emotions.
Wow.
So that was not the first school shooting like what we are experiencing. These are children who have lost all hope. There's a lot of reasons these things take place. But why completely ignore that two major events that had never in 6,000 years of world history? In 6,000 years of world history, two events took place in that decade that had never taken place before. Teaching children in high school and in college that the Big Bang Theory was a fact. Then why is Newton's law of gravity still a law? Why is Einstein still a theory? And why is Neil deGrasse Tyson still preaching that Einstein was right? Well, then change and say openly, let the science community, don't leave us hanging in limbo like this. This is unfair. This is like church, folks. Don't leave us hanging. Tell us which one it is. And neither one of them have the guts to stand up and say which one it is. You know why? Because neither of them know what it is. We know what it is. It's called the immediacy of light. And yes, gravity is immediate. It's not a delay. And that's what is a part of eternity. Why is that no delay, no process? Light doesn't have a process. Gravity doesn't have a process. It is. The moment the moon shifts, the moment that the gravitational pull on our planet shifts, the moment, there's not a delay. And where light shows up, where light emanates from, and where it arrives, they're both instantaneous. There's no process. They tried to tell you that light was a wave, it's a particle, but actually the wave was there before the light hit it. And the particle was there before the light hit it. That's what a photon is. A photon is not an element of light. It's an element that has light interacting with it. So why don't they just tell the truth? Just take that one thing. Go and prove me wrong. Go prove me wrong that a photon is not an element of energy that is interacting with light. Because the element of energy can move on, and it still does all the things that that element of energy does without the light. So how is that a photon? a brand new identified element called a photon that only exists when it's interacting with light. That's not an element, folks. That is the element of light interacting with an element of energy. So there's your second sermon for the day. So why are we going into this? Because, folks, the immediacy of righteousness, the immediacy of light, the immediacy of gravity is the immediacy of the eternal. Why are these eternal? Why are these immediate? Because they're not earth-bound things. Light doesn't come in the earth. Gravity doesn't happen in the earth. Gravity happens from the heavens, if you want to call it that. Light comes from the heavens, and they are eternal. But that's what no one wants to accept, is that this incredible nature of light, the immediacy of light is the immediacy of righteousness. The immediacy of gravity is the immediacy of light and righteousness. And that's why these correspond to righteousness, is because they are not manufactured here on this planet. The rest of those things, all physics is here on the planet. What they did is try to take our physics and apply it to the universe. Thanks for playing. Yeah, it's crazy. And then they made this shift because they found a discrepancy in Mars' path around the sun, which is closest to the sun. So the discrepancy they found could be measured, like if you took one of your hair, not one of Daniel's hairs or mine from our head, but if you took one of the hairs from your head and held it out from your body at arm's length. That's how much the variance was in, and still is, in Mars going around the planet. That Newton's law covered every variance, every tilt, everything that happened in our universe was measured accurately by Newtonian physics until they noticed this little difference in Mercury. And guess what? You're not just looking at a moment of time and a hair. That hair's difference happens over 100 years. And you're telling me that can't be the influence of something else? Newton doesn't explain it. Well, so we give up Newtonian physics for black holes that nobody knows what they are, for string theory, for gaps and loops and bumps and hoops and things. So we surrendered one answer to one single variance, to Newton's law, and we surrendered it to hundreds of unexplainable questions in Einstein's theory. So that's your physics lesson for today.
And if you want more of those, we are sending out some of these teachings that Michael has put together, but they are exclusively coming to those who are subscribed to our email list. And if you want to do that, go to gospelrevolution.com, hit the newsletter, and you can subscribe right there, and you will get all of these teachings hot off the press.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, guys. And these are just thoughts I'm thinking through. I tell you, when you stop and realize the power of the gospel, you've got to stop and ask. See, we've got to address all of these issues. We've got to address creation. If the Big Bang is true, what we're doing and all Christians are doing is stupid. All of us. If the Big Bang is real, what we are doing is ridiculous. If creation is not real, the gospel is not real. And if evolution is true, then the gospel is not real. If archaeology is right, then the gospel is not right. So we have to take on all of these disciplines and go through them logically and see where, because I'm telling you, so far, I've seen where that they have, and they're all theories, none of them are laws, but they've ignored so many places and they've made something out of nothing. in so many places, it's just ridiculous. So we're going to be teaching on virtually every law of physics because what has happened is they've taken those and applied them to eternal principles.
And so it is, we must leave you, family and friends. If you'd like to know anything about the gospel revolution or question Michael on all of these things, then call our office on
832-318-9339.
and speak to us about how you want to participate, or go to www.gospelrevolution.com and hit the connect link. You can, of course, find us on your favorite social media networks, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to hit that subscribe, share, and like button on whatever platform you're listening. Now it's good night from Daniel Rouse in the frozen tundra.
And it's good night from Michael Williams right here in the presence of light. Not just spiritually, but also physically. We are, that is the part of eternity that's shining on you right now. That is immediate. There's no delay in light. There is no delay in what's happening right now. What's happening on the planet, there's delay, nothing but delay. But when it comes to where we're connected to the heavens, there is no delay. It's not measurable. So we're going to be talking to you more about those things. If you don't like it, just throw it away. But I don't see how anybody can not address these things and come to firm conclusions about the gospel.
We sure hope you enjoyed today's PowerCast. And remember, we'll be here to do the same thing all over again next week, only
better. Be better.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you seek, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy. Lost and alone, staring at the unknown, and these words be the compass that guides you right home. We are one, we are love, we are. Know where you gotta be, nothing to complete. It's not a thing that you need, you're the love. Just remember to breathe and take a second off. Look, I'm just trying to remind you that you're perfectly divine, flawlessly designed. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, let these words be the compass.
Deconstructing religion and barbecuing the sacred cows of Christianity before your very eyes. You are listening to
The Gospel Revolution.